Yo, what's up YouTube? Emulation of real hardware. I've got real hardware behind me. That's my childhood NES playing Double Dragon 2, one of my favorite beat 'em ups of all time. Got my little controller here. This is the original controller that belonged to me back in the day. It always makes me happy. I have huge nostalgia for the Nintendo Entertainment System. However, nowadays we're starting to see things that are a little bit more convenient. Let's face it, we've got Nintendo Switch Online, you've got the NES Classic, the SNES Classic, you've got RetroArch, or RetroArch, whatever you want to call it. So many emulators out there, guys. I started with Nesticle back in the day, in the MS-DOS days in Windows 95. I was playing NES games on my computer. At the time, we didn't even have controllers that were capable of more than like 2 button presses. It was insane, right? So it was like, the future was then. I think about it, on my 486 DX2 processor, 66 megahertz, I was playing NES games and they were running perfect. Well, relatively perfect. Then we have the FPGA side of the house, guys. We've got, the analog consoles that are all coming out, that some of them obviously been released, and we've got the Mr. FPGA. If you don't know what a FPGA is, guys, basically, it's still emulation, however, it emulates at a hardware level, so it's supposed to be faster and more accurate, and in most cases it is. So emulation to me, as a user of video games, has always been a good thing. When it's done right and it's done for the right reasons, it's a godsend. The amount of things that you can actually add to your games, like upscaling and these little quirks and stuff like that you can add to your games, filters and stuff like that, it's just amazing to me. Save states and stuff being readily available, all that was just so good, and it really opened the door for people that would never have bought the hardware in the first place, because let's face it, you can't buy most of this hardware now. You can go on eBay and you're going to get ripped off, or you can go on your local marketplace and you might get ripped off, you might get a good deal, but you don't know unless you're educated on it. And honestly, nowadays, guys, with people that are coming up, do they even care if it's real or not? I mean, it's kind of a niche thing. You see records and stuff coming back. Records are very popular again now because of warm sound. But CDs were the future, and then CDs were no longer the future. CDs are arguably better than records. I'll say it. I know it's a hot take, but it's true. So when it comes to emulation, guys, I am an advocate. I love emulation. I've had devices all the way back since my Pocket PC, which honestly is one of the best ways to play Double Dragon. I'm not kidding you. I am very serious. This little guy here, the HP iPac Pocket PC, look at that little controller on it. It plays NES games perfect. I love this little device. Got some Double Dragon 2 on it right there. And then we're going to get into a little bit more emulation here, guys. Let's get into Nintendo Switch Online. We got to talk about it. All right, so let's go into this. So, Double Dragon's running on this bad boy. Not only that, you can play it with people, which is really damn cool. Because let's face it, nowadays, I mean, especially, I feel like since COVID, people aren't going to people's houses as much anymore. People aren't socializing. So having an online aspect to play these games, guys, brings new life to it. That's emulation, guys. Emulation brings these things. Without emulation, we wouldn't have that capability because the original consoles didn't have that capability. So I'm a huge advocate for the features that emulation actually brings to the table. Nintendo Switch Online, guys, really cool way to play these old games. You've got the NES, you've got SNES, the Sega Genesis, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy, N64, and this is the bomb. Like, if you don't want to pay an extra cent and you have a Switch already, this is as far as I would go personally. I showed you the iPac already, then we've got the SNES Classic, guys. Is it real hardware or is it emulation? If you look at this is basically a glorified multi-cart with 2 controllers. This thing's the bomb, man. I think this is one of my favorite devices ever released. Now, a lot of people say, oh, the emulation's not quite snappy on it, that kind of thing. But for $79 Canadian, guys, this was an absolute steal. One of the best purchases I ever made. I waited in line since 4 a.m. in the morning on release day to get this thing. And the reason I did that is because I missed out on this sucker right here. I missed out on the NES Classic. I got this with the second batches of NES Classics. This is another device that has awesome games on it, some of the best for the system. Came with 1 controller, but you can see from the ports, so you can plug in a Wii controller, you can even plug in a SNES Classic controller. These things are awesome, man. And I'll even went a step further, right? Because you know what? I saw this bad boy, I picked this up. This Sega Genesis is one of the best mini consoles. It's got so many great games on it. It's fantastic. Absolutely loved it so much, and the design is so cool, guys. So nostalgic. It's dusty right now, but that's okay. And then we've got, The second version of it came in, it actually had Sega CD support. It's even better. Look at these things, guys. They're friggin' awesome. I love them. And yeah, they don't get as much use now because I use stuff I got behind me somewhat more. But if I were going somewhere and I just want to play some video games, if I were going over to a buddy's house, I'd bring one of these guys. Why not? You plug it in with HDMI, you plug it into the USB, you're good to go, right? And I mean, let's face it, guys, it's a lot less ridiculous than something like this. Look at this thing, right? This is not technically emulation, right? This is hilarious. So this is a multi-cart into, you know, a friggin' Superboy Hyperkin device. This looks ridiculous. It works, but it's a lot, like, look at it. It is ridiculous. So I can play Blaster Master on the Super Nintendo, which, you know, my last video was pretty much about that. I think that's hilarious, you know? But that looks kind of ridiculous, but the fact that it has 2 ports and everything is kind of crazy. This is a clone system. It's in between hardware and emulation, you know, it's like, it's kind of ridiculous. So listen, if you're going to gatekeep because of multi-carts, I'm going to tell you something. This is from me and you. So a multi-cart is not much better than emulation. Let's face it, it's not the real hardware. Sure, you're getting the real experience of it, but really, if you think about it, it's no different than an FPGA device. Sure, you're playing on a real device, but you're not using a real cart. You're using a dumped ROM on a cart. Is that much better than emulation? No. So don't gatekeep to people that are emulating. What really bothers me is the fact that people feel like they have the right to gatekeep because I've got a CRT, I've got a Super Nintendo, I've got all the gear, I've got Retrovision cables. Listen, even Retrovision cables, you're modifying the original experience. You know? It's crazy to me. Unless you're playing on composite or RF here in North America for these old systems, you're basically modifying the original experience. If you're playing on a TV that's a flat screen Trinitron, you're modifying the original experience. Sure, it looks better, it plays better, but if you want the authentic experience and you're going to gatekeep, you bet your ass you better have an 80 CRT TV, and you better have an NES, and you better have NES controllers, the original, and the NES games, otherwise you're a hypocrite. So when it comes down to emulation, guys, I am pro emulation. When it comes to hardware, I am pro hardware. I think it is both great. I think it's all about the games. It's about what's accessible to everybody. And the reality is, if you don't want to dump a ton of money, guys, emulation is the way. Nintendo Switch Online, SNES Classic, one of these little devices that I showed you already, awesome for that. So play the games. That's what they're there to do. Bring back those memories, or if you've never played these games before, make some new memories with some Nintendo Switch Online. And until next time, guys, this is Koi Fish Gaming signing off to play some Double Dragon 2.